Hi, this is your favorite Kingdom channel, and today I have a pleasure to continue with the series of broadcasts I started on Nigeria. So today we are going to be looking at um, this broadcast about 1986 prophecy of old and new Nigeria. This prophecy was declared by a missionary that was sent by God to Nigeria from Wales, United Kingdom, in 1937, and his name is Pa Sydney Granville Elton, popularly known as Pa Elton. Now, before I elaborate on this prophecy of old and new Nigeria, it is important I make an historical background or foundation to this prophecy. First of all, as I elaborated in my previous broadcast, that God has a prophetic and end time mandate for this country called Nigeria. And because of that, God began a work in Nigeria in the early 20th century. Apart from the works that was done by various missionaries that came from Europe and America, God started a revival in this country called Nigeria. And during this time of revival, a lot of indigenous churches and indigenous church leaders, that worked in great signs and wonders, miracles, healings, and great dimensions of the power and spirit of Pentecost. Now, this timeline was from 1918 to 1930. In the history of the church in Nigeria, it is called the 1918 to 1930 Indigenous Pentecostal Revival Movement of Nigeria. It was immediately after the First World War and also after the 1918 pandemic that broke out in Europe. And between this 1918 and 1930, God raised some men in Nigeria that I describe or I refer to as the foundational apostolic fathers of the country called Nigeria. Foundational apostolic fathers of the country called Nigeria. One of them, his name is called Joseph Shadari. He was the one that founded the Precious Stone Society. Um, Another person is Moses Orimolade, that founded the Cherubim and Seraphim Society. Another one is Josiah Oshitelu, that's founded the Church of the Lord Aladuram movement. So Joseph Shadari, Moses Orimolade, Josiah Oshitelu. And in 1928, God raised another foundational apostolic father for the country called Nigeria. And his name is called Apostle Joseph Ayodele Babalola, that started Christ Apostolic Church in 1939. God used this apostolic father, for great pentecostal revival, starting from 1928, when he was called by God, and then he started, his evangelistic ministry at a place called Okeoye, at a town called Ilesha in Osun State. And during his evangelistic campaigns, great, numerous signs and wonders. The dead were raised. People that had the disease of all kinds were healed. Various kinds of healings, were experienced during his evangelistic campaign. It got to a time that around the 1930, this man and his movement, his evangelistic movement in southwest Nigeria, became a threat to the colonial government, that was ruling over the Republic of Nigeria. And eventually, because of his popularity in the country, the leadership of the colonial government over Nigeria arrested him and he was jailed for 6 months. Before he was jailed, he joined a particular church that was already on ground in Nigeria called the Faith Tabernacle. But because the Faith Tabernacle leaders, they could not rescue him and deliver him from the colonial government of Nigeria, the leadership of the Faith Tabernacle in Nigeria, they began to write to another denomination in United Kingdom, and that is the Apostolic Church. The Apostolic Church was a church that was established in United Kingdom, and it was a church that was established on the foundation of apostles and prophets, in their ministry. So, the leadership of the Apostolic Church in United Kingdom, they reached out to the colonial government in Nigeria, and that was how a lot of elders, ministers of God that were imprisoned and persecuted by the colonial government were released. So that was how Apostle Ayodele Babalola now left Faith Tabernacle and joined the Apostolic Church, from early 1930s, like around 1931, and the Apostolic Church began to grow in Nigeria, especially in southwest Nigeria, and they were funded by the headquarters in United Kingdom. They began to build schools, hospitals, apart from evangelistic campaigns, from towns to towns, city to cities, and from region to region. Now, also, the Apostolic Church in the United Kingdom began to send missionaries, apostles from their headquarters to come to Nigeria um, and oversee the Apostolic Church that was established in Nigeria. They they ordained a lot of elders who are indigenous, ministers, especially from southwest Nigeria. They were ordained. Many were ordained as apostles, as prophets, as pastors, as elders, and the church began to grow. So there is this young man. His name is called Sydney Granville Elton. He was in his early 30s. He was an elder, in the Apostolic Church at Wales, in United Kingdom, the headquarters of the church at Wales. He was an elder in the church, a young and vibrant, believer. So in early 1930s, he began to have personal revelation and vision, to come to Nigeria. And for almost 6 years, he had witnesses from the leadership of the church and from various people, that witnessed to the calling of God upon his life. So in summary, in 1937, this young man, who was just in his early 30s, traveled all the way from Wales of United Kingdom. He came with his wife, Ruth, his wife, and then a 3-year-old daughter, whose name was Ruth Elton. So they came to Nigeria and landed in Lagos. From Lagos, he came and settled down in a town called Ilesha in Osun State, Nigeria. He received a definite instruction from the Lord that he should settle at Ilesha in Osun State. That was in 1937. So when he came, he joined, of course, the Apostolic Church of Nigeria, and he began to work in partnership with Apostle Ayodele Babalola and other ministers and elders in the church. Of course, because of the internal crisis in the Apostolic Church of Nigeria, Apostle Ayodele Babalola with 2 elders put out of the Apostolic Church, and they started a new denomination called Christ Apostolic Church, which started in 1939. This young man, S.G. Elton, even though he was sent by the leadership of the Apostolic Church from Wales in United Kingdom, the purpose why he was sent was to strengthen and nurture the denomination that was in Nigeria, in overseeing the schools, the health centers, and also the ministerial work. But this young man had a different vision in mind. His vision not to um, was not to come and be establishing more denominations. His vision was to raise young leaders and new leadership that will be equipped with the message of the kingdom. That was the vision and the fire he carried when he came to Nigeria. So even when Apostle Ayodele Babalola started Christ Apostolic Church, they were still working hand in hand, encouraging each other, partnering with each other in ministry. Now, before Apostle Ayodele Babalola passed on, before he died in 1959, there was a time he had a vision and he shared with some members of the church. It was still about Nigeria. And in that vision or dream, he saw God distributing beautiful gifts to, different races, different people, different continents of the world, like the white people, different colors, the Chinese, the white people, the Europeans, and beautiful gifts. But in that vision, he did not see any gifts being given to the black race. And Apostle Babalola was worried. And in his worry, he now asked God, why was the black race neglected? Why was the black race not given any gift or reward? And the Lord laughed and the Lord encouraged him. And then the Lord told him that he has a special gift for the black race. So the Lord told him in that vision that his gift for the black race is his fullness. His fullness, the fullness of God. So in that vision, like maybe others were being given like gold, silver, beautiful gifts that you can think of. But the gifts that God promised the black race was himself, the fullness of God. And that also, was also the kind of vision that Abraham had in Genesis chapter 15. In the book of Genesis chapter 15, in a vision, Abraham was also worried in that vision. And God now spoke to Abraham that, Abraham, I am thy shield and thy exceedingly great reward. I am thy shield and thy exceedingly great reward. So God told Abraham, I am your reward. I am your reward. I am your gift. So that was the same kind of gift that God promised the black race in the vision that Apostle Babalola had. Okay, but that's not where I'm going. So even after the demise of Apostle Babalola in year 1959, just a year before independence, Pa S.G. Elton, continued in his work of ministry. In 1954, the leadership of the Apostolic Church in Nigeria let him go. They um, they allowed him to leave the platform of the apostolic church, and that was when actually he now began to um, have his own mission, carried out independently. That was in 1954. So he began to mentor young men, young lecturers from various universities in Nigeria. He was not he was not concerned about building denominations or structures. His vision was to raise young men, new leadership from the church that will be equipped with the message of the kingdom, and that will take this message to uh, you know the entire part of the world. So he was going from campus to campus, from university to university, you know, um, teaching and preaching the gospel, mentoring young leaders. And by the 70s, he had become the father of Pentecostal revival movement in Nigeria. From 1970s even till when he died, uh, uh, in the month of January 1987, he had mentored a lot of young men from universities who eventually today became the leading figures of the Pentecostal and charismatic movements of Nigeria today. Some of those men that he mentored, you know, are men like Benson Idahosa. In fact, it was Pa S.G. Elton that ordained Archbishop Benson Idahosa in 1971. And from 1971, to 1973, both Pa Elton and Benson Idahosa, were involved together in an evangelistic campaign in Benin City, especially in the hometown of Benson Idahosa. It was um, it was in 1973 that their partnership in ministry, um, became separated because Archbishop Benson Idahosa had a new vision and he began to preach what I call today the prosperity gospel. The prosperity gospel that many Pentecostal ministers, are preaching today actually started with Archbishop Benson Idahosa in 1973. Pastor Enoch Adeboye of Redeemed Christian Church of God today was one of the ministers that was influenced by Pa Elton. Pastor Adeboye was a young lecturer, at the Department of Mathematics in University of Ilorin. But from that university, he used to come to Elisha every 50 days, to learn, to sit down and to be tutored under this man, Pa S.G. Elton. This man had influence upon ministers like Pastor William Kumuyi of Deeper Life, Dr. Chris Oyakilome, Francis Waleoke, Dr. Mike Oye, Dr. Paul Nwachukwu, Apostle Geoffrey Nombiri, and Brother Bile Akani, and even Bishop David Oyedepo was also one of the ministers that were influenced by the ministry of Pa S.G. Elton. Pa S.G. Elton. So This is just a foundational background how Pa S.G. Elton came into Nigeria. So before I move into the prophecy, again, I want to emphasize that uh, um, the foundational apostolic fathers that God Himself raised for Nigeria. I'll just list the prominent among them. These were men that were indigenous people of Nigeria, and they walk in great dimensions of the spirit and power of Pentecost, that laid a good foundation for the gospel and Christianity in Nigeria. People like Joseph Shadari, people like Moses Orimolade, people like Josiah Oshitelu, people like Apostle Ayodele Babalola, and we also have people like Bishop Ajayi Crowther. And finally, I'm adding this great man that came from Republic of Wales, United Kingdom. His name is Pa Sidney Granville Elton. This is a man that when he came into Nigeria, he said his inheritance is in Nigeria. In fact, he gave an instruction that after his death, his body, his corpse should be buried in his hometown in Nigeria, in Elisha. That his inheritance, his portion is in Nigeria. So he has become a Nigerian, even though he's a British person. So this apostolic father made a prophecy a year before his death. He died on January 1987. But the previous year, that was 1986, I think during the administration in Benin City, he made a prophecy about this country called Nigeria. And the prophecy, is now well documented and well quoted by a lot of ministers of God today. It is called Pa Elton 1986 prophecy of old and new Nigeria. And this is the prophecy. Pa Elton in 1986 declared, and he said, Nigeria and Nigerians will be known all over the world for corruption. Your name, Nigeria, will stink of corruption. But after a while, a new face will come, a face of righteousness. People from the nations of the earth will hold a Nigerian and say, we want to follow you to your nation to go and learn righteousness. I will read it again. Pa Elton 1986 prophecy of old and new Nigeria. Nigeria and Nigerians will be known all over the world for corruption. Your name, Nigeria, will stink of corruption. But after a while, a new face will come, a face of righteousness. people from the nations of the earth will hold a Nigerian and say, we want to follow you to your nation to go and learn righteousness. First of all, before I dissect this prophecy as a witness of God, I want to talk about that number 86. That prophecy was given in 1986. 86 is a unique prophetic number. Abraham was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. And we all know what Ishmael represents. Ishmael represents, a body or a spirit of Antichrist. Again, it was in 1986 under the leadership of the former head of state, General Badamusa Ibrahim Babangida, registered Nigeria as a full member of OIC, Organization of Islamic Conference. So a very wrong foundation was laid in Nigeria in 1986. A foundation of establishing Nigeria Republic as an Islamic republic. But because God has a purpose for the country, God used one of the foundational apostolic fathers of Nigeria, whose name is Pa S.G. Elton. In that same 1986, that a wrong foundation was laid, God spoke through a foundational apostle and gave a prophecy of a new Nigeria that would emerge. And as I have elaborated in my last broadcast, the 16th cycle of Nigeria from 1914 is the programmed timeline that the new Nigeria would start. The beginning of new Nigeria would start. And permit me to say that Nigerian Kingdom revival movements has already started in this 16th cycle of Nigeria from 2019 to 2026 by the 7th trumpet sounded. By the 7th trumpet sounded. And we can see 1918 to 1930. That was when God raised foundational apostolic fathers of the country. That was the time that Nigeria experienced indigenous pentecostal revival movements. 1918 to 1930. And exactly 100 years later, 2019, God has started a new revival called the Kingdom Revival Movement. The Kingdom Revival Movement. by the seventh trumpet sounded. 2019 upwards. 2019 upwards. A new revival has started in Nigeria called the Kingdom Revival Movement by the message of the seventh trumpet sounded. Now, permit me to read from the scripture the prophecy of Old and New Nigeria by S.G. Elton from the book of Zechariah chapter 8. The book of Zechariah chapter 8. Verse 13. Zechariah chapter 8 verse 13. The Bible says, "And it shall come to pass that as you are a curse among the Eden, O house of Judah and house of Israel, so will I save you, and you shall be a blessing. Fear not, but let your hands be strong." Verse 23. "Thus says the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold of all the languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirts of him that is a Jew, saying, We will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you." Permit me to read this prophecy like this. "And it has come to pass that as you are a curse, among the Eden, among the community of nations, O Nigeria, so will I save you, and you shall be a blessing. Fear not, but let your hands be strong." This prophecy was given in 1986, and this is exactly 40 years after this prophecy was given or was delivered by S.G. Elton. This is 2026, exactly 40 years. Number 40 stands for wilderness. Nigeria as a country has been in the wilderness for 40 years. From 1986 to 2026. Nigeria as a country has been known or has been characterized with corruption, unrighteousness, terrorism, and insecurity. Curse and prosperity gospel. Now the time has come. A new face has come for a new Nigeria. A new face has come. A new Nigeria has begun. A new Nigeria of integrity and honor. A new Nigeria of righteousness and truth. A new Nigeria of peace and security. a new Nigeria of blessing, a new Nigeria of the kingdom gospel, the kingdom gospel, the kingdom gospel. I want to declare that this timeline 2026 slash 2027 is a crossroad, is a crossroad for the beginning of a new Nigeria. The 1986 prophecy by one of the foundational apostolic fathers of Nigeria, Pa Sidney Granville Elton, has come to pass and is happening in our eyes. The kingdom revival movement has begun in Nigeria by the seventh trumpet sounded in this day of the Lord. Once again, I say congratulations and welcome to the beginning of a new Nigeria. It is a new face. It is a new dawn. Thank you and God bless you. Have a wonderful day.